another. Here is your definition of your identity through difference. Identity through difference, meaning X is X because X is not Y. Then in that sense you have you know what happened? I was going to use my board, but I decided not to use. Imagine two what is God? God has to be all comprehensive. God has to be all comprehensive. Imagine two circles. This circle here is X plus Y. It contains X plus Y. In order to differentiate from the other circle, X plus Z. Are they different? Two circles. They have commonalities a lot, but one has Y, the other has Z. What that means is, if I have these two circles, God, whatever you define of X plus Y, X is everything. Something is lacking in God. Why? Elements Y. That means this God is not perfect. So because this God hasn't got everything, you see. So that's why God has to be self-defined as far as so substance. You see, in Aristotle, substance is what can exist by itself. But here it says substance is what is considered and does not require another conception. Sounds very logical. So, and with that you can use it to describe God. By God, I mean an absolutely infinite being that is substance consisting of infinite attributes, each of which expresses eternal and infinite essence. Can you quarrel with this definition or not? I think you probably cannot, will this fall into the Christian God? I think so. That's as far as you can see, This Shirley translation is from the Hackett books, Okay. So he takes his definition very seriously. Definitions are not functional the way Thomas Hobbes, who was more of a political philosopher, materialist political philosopher. His definitions are not arbitrary, but they reflect clear and distinct ideas, and that reminds you of Descartes. Okay, clear and distinct ideas. So I think last round I mentioned about foundationalism. I don't want to go through it again. How, of course, none of us start a philosophy from ground level, from fresh. Here there is a tradition behind, and that is that here you have Spinoza at one level absolutizes Aristotle's definition of independent existence. If it's just independent existence, you can envisage a world where you have a multitude of independent things existing. But here you have this, if you add on to the definition of God as infinite being, infinite attributes, then it covers everything, sapu already, nothing left. So in that sense, at the bottom of reality is only one substance, and that is God, if you may call it that way. Why does Spinoza insist there's only one substance? Remember, if you do deal with Descartes has these three major substances: thought, material, but the world of the mind, of world of body, material, and of course God. Okay, when you have dualism of mind and body, you have a problem. If they are so different from one another, how does the mind affect the body? I mean, this is a problem for Christians also, you have to ask yourself. But of course, at some level, Descartes thinks that in the pineal gland that joins the halves, that's where the mind affects the body. But it's a very arbitrary connection, which really violates the initial assumption that mind and body are two different realms, so to say. Mind and materials are different realms. But now you're saying they can interact, Now, of course, you also have to ask, as a Christian, if God is spirit, can God act in the world? There's always a big discussion in the late 70s, late 70s, early 80s. So that is you may want to say the one of the motivation of avoiding this what seems to be inadequate assumption. Okay, so and that is the question: how can finite substance, whether mental material, be substances existing independent if they depend on God? So what you're saying is that if you have dualism, they have independent existence. How can material have independent existence? So the easiest thing is to try to erase whatever fundamental difference there is, and that is to say that let's reduce all to one substance and see whether we can build afresh our knowledge. Okay, so that's what happens. Okay, so let me just read through that. Let's clear the board and just say there's only one substance, one infinite substance. It makes sense at one level. We must say that substance is one and infinite, since all delimitation is excluded by the definition of substance. There's no limit to the definition of substance. In other words, substance is one because there cannot be more than one substance in the world, one ultimate fundamental reality. Otherwise, the relationship of the first substance to the second substance or other substances, if you allow for a second, you allow for additional, would be included in our full understanding of substance. There's something that contradicts the definition. I hope you can make sense. So basically what I've been saying is an expansion of what this statement says. There is only one substance. They cannot be eliminated or limited by another. So if that's the case, this one substance or God has to be infinite, and if it exists, God is self-caused, so to say, causa sui, self-caused. Okay, in quality and in quantity. Here, of course, discussion of God has already proceeded a few centuries, in that Aquinas had said that God is one whose there is no distinction between existence and essence. Earlier, before Aquinas, you have some objects that can have essence but no existence, meaning they're conceptually possible, but they don't exist. We can imagine unicorns, but unicorns don't exist. There is the distinction between essence and existence. But when it comes to God, God by definition of his essence implies existence. In fact, Aquinas would put existence precede essence in that sense, you may want to say. So, and even before that you have Avicenna trying to understand this but not quite reaching it. But so this, when you say God is self-caused, God does not, what causes God to exist? God does not cause himself to exist. God simply exists. There's a difference. God cannot destroy himself. Can God destroy himself? Because if God can cause himself to exist, then God can destroy himself. You enter into this tangle of logical contradictions. But God exists. He does not cause himself to exist. You have to make a distinction with that, okay? So, let's go on. So, now, on the other hand, if you have God and substance, what can we say about this God? You want to say, what can we say more about this God? Okay. Back in Descartes' philosophy, you remember, you have thought, body, thought, mind, thought, which is clear. We have access to our own thoughts. It's a reality you cannot deny. And you have objects around us. Objects around us are perceived not as infinitesimal little dots and points, but they are extended objects. So you want to reduce the world to its most fundamental categories, and that is the study of ontology. What, by answering the question, what are the most fundamental basis of reality, categories of reality. So he reduces it to thought and extension. Thought, that is what Descartes has reduced his beginning of his philosophy. He said, and then extension. But so if you have these two reality, so I have here God and substance. Extension being the basic attribute of the world, because the moment you describe objects in the world, you about shapes and sizes. But for God, is infinite. So his infinity must be various objects of the world have finite extension. God has infinite extension. Now, here is of course something that comes to our mind. I can imagine